Alright, so show you how to really quick set up a turntable. I'm just gonna run with this little person I have. So the first thing you will probably want to do is create some kind of floor plane for your object to spin aimlessly on. And the other thing, I usually like doing this, it depends on your object whether or not it makes sense, but I like making these little like bases for things. I just think it looks a little bit nicer, so like when you spin your person around, it'll like spin on this base, and I don't know, it just feels like a little more like professional to me. And in this case made sense because it's a little figure, but anywho. Right, so you're gonna make your ground plane and your walls, and I'm literally just going to rotate this 90 degrees, shove it over, and just extrude that edge, and now I have walls. Obviously, so I mean you guys should be doing this for all your renders, but anywho. So the next thing you're going to do is make a new camera. So just go to Create, Cameras, Camera, call it RenderCam, RenderCam, or whatever the heck you want to name it. And I'm just going to go and do Look Through Selected so that I can position this camera. You can see actually as I have this camera selected and I'm moving it around, these attributes will change. I'm going to put on the resolution gate because I want to see where my object will actually render. And I'm just going to say maybe something like this isn't like completely terrible. So what I'm going to do if I like that camera angle, I'm going to come over to the outliner, select my camera, and just select all of these and do right click and lock those. So now I can't move or rotate within this camera. It's going to stay exactly where it is. You'll also notice like here's my render cam. I can't, like the handles are grayed out, I can't move them. The locking of the handles or like the locking of attributes is denoted by this little blue bar that'll show up here. If you ever need to unlock any, you can just grab those attributes, right click and do unlock selected, and it will unlock those. But yeah, so now I have, I guess, the sort of basics of my scene. I have thrown in some lights, which I've done before. So I'm going to go back into my render cam. No particular reason for it, but so I'm going to take the model of this figure. Excuse me. And this requires a little bit of animation. So for those of you that use, you might have used animation for one of the other assignments I mentioned, but I'll go over it again. So down here is your time slider. This shows what frame you're on, like whichever frame you're on is going to be gray. This little dude down here is your range slider. So it'll show you you're going from frame 1 to frame 66. So these inner numbers are the range that you are seeing displayed here on the slider. So you can see I'm going from frame 20 to frame 66. These outer numbers are the frames that you have in your scene as a whole. So like I could scroll this guy all the way out, and I only am going to go up to frame 200. I can scroll all the way back, I'm only going to go to frame 1. I can set these to be whatever I want. If I wanted negative frames for some reason, sometimes you do that for simming actually. Or like if I wanted to set this to like 999, like a crazy person. Oh my god, I forgot about this song. 100% going in my Spotify. I'm actually really excited about that. Alright, sorry. And now, anyway, so once I set that to 999, I can go all the way out here and scroll up, etc. For turntables, ideally, I think it's good to have about 2 frames of rotation for each degree of turning you're doing. So you're basically going to be taking this character and spinning them all the way around. So I would like I said, ideally I'm going to use about 720 frames for these. Realistically, you can get away with like 360. So one frame for every degree of rotation that you're doing. So I'm just going to, I'll select my entire figure. And I'm just gonna, you can set the keyframes a few different ways. You can just hit S, and that will just key every single attribute on this. So it's done translation, rotation, scale, etc. And you can see if it's this little red line here that says it has a key on it. You'll also notice when I do that, it has set a keyframe, this little red line on frame 1. The other option that you have to do this is I'll undo that. In this case, I know I'm only keying rotation Y, so I'm just going to right-click on that and do key selected, and it's only keyed that value. Strictly speaking, that's probably better practice. It just keeps your scene a little bit cleaner. But anyway, just going to go from 0, and then at frame 720, I'm going to set this rotation to 360. And again, right-click and key that frame. So you can see that now my figure scrolls back and forth wildly. Now you'll also notice that it spins very aggressively, like off-screen. It's not centered at all. I actually did that on purpose to make a point. You do want to make sure that your object is like spinning around some kind of logical central axis. So in this case, like even if the pivot was like somewhere here, as this spins, it's still like moving around in space, which just looks kind of sloppy. In this case, I have like I can snap this pivot to the very bottom of my base, like the perfect center. So if I do that, it's going to spin perfectly in place, which looks significantly neater. So go back to my render cam, and you will notice, so down here there's a few little buttons, pretty much just like standard controls, like playback controls for things. Mostly the only one I ever use is this play pause button. But you'll notice like as soon as I hit this, it'll start slowly rotating your object around. I can stop that, I can scrub through or do whatever. There are a few different settings for viewing your animation. So if you right click in this time slider down here, you'll see playback speed. And there's 3 options. The one that I think is maybe the safest is play every frame max real time or real time. Play every frame free, will probably spin this like way faster. Yeah, like this is spinning way faster than it's actually going. Because there's no cap. Like if the computer can process it going faster, it will. This is like real time. But strictly speaking, you can never really count on these guys or like those playback speeds to get you a real-time render. The only like surefire way to do it is to right-click and do Play Blast. You usually open your tool settings. I'll save this to whatever random settings I want. You can choose, so from window for display size is going to render whatever you have in this viewport. From render settings is going to render whatever you have in your render settings. So like in this case, a 540 by 304 image. Scale is going to be, if I set this to 1 and I'm rendering, say from my render settings, it's going to be a 540 by 304 pixel movie. If I set this to 0.5, it's going to be a 270. What am I saying? I don't know. I can't math anymore. It's going to be a 270 by 152 image because it's going to have like, it's going to be half this size. That's what I'm trying to say here. I usually don't worry about frame padding, and I will usually do save to file, and if you want to, you can change the name here. So in this case, I'm going to just play blast. I'll do from window to show you guys what it does. It's going through fairly quickly. And that should, if you have your project set, that should, so here's in my project, and it's actually just created, I did not have this movie folder, it's just created that little movie file, or like movie folder, and you can see it's like slowly trying to populate this image in. So I might actually, very tedious. It's been a while since I listened to Dire Straits. All right, I'm gonna please stop. Okay, cool. And it did actually do a pretty good job of like not exploding that. But this is the only way you can like actually get an idea of the actual speed that this object is moving. You'll also notice that since I selected from window and did a scale of 1, it's pretty much the more or less exact size-ish, give or take, of my viewport. And it's even included like the polygon count up here and the render view. So normally if you're doing a play blast, it's a better idea to do it from render settings and just like have it render out of this camera. All right, so there's like, I mean, that's more or less it for setting up your renders. Really quick, I'm going to run through and just speed this up because it'll be easier to see something. If you ever need to move a keyframe, by the way, just mouse over the key or like the frame that you want to move the frame on, move the key on, hold down Shift, click the key, and it should highlight it red, and then you can just drag it wherever the heck you want it. You can also, if you Shift, click, and drag, you can select a range of frames and then move them around. You can also scale frames, which I very much do not recommend doing, because it will put frames on like the quarter frame, which is honestly just ridiculous. And then you have to like go into your graph editor to edit. It's very annoying. But anyway, so if I look at this, you will notice, so the ideal turntable will sort of loop seamlessly. And technically speaking, this does, but you can see that it slows down to the point of basically stopping when it hits the original position. And then as it gets to the center, it starts speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. And then again, it'll start slowing down again. So I would definitely want you guys to fix this if you guys were doing your own turntables. And it's a pretty easy fix. So if you go into Windows, Rendering Editors, Windows Animation Editors, Graph Editor. I've been doing too much rendering recently. Select your figure, and you will notice here's like a visual representation of the keyframes that are set on this object. In this case, I actually have the one set from like the frame 720 or whatever. So I'm just going to click and drag over that and just delete it, and it'll actually delete that frame. But you can see here, so you'll kind of learn to interpret this later, but like here's kind of where it's like slow, it's speeding up, speeding up, speeding up, going like pretty fast, and then slowing down, slowing down, slowing down until it comes to a stop here. So I'm just going to, again, click and just drag over all these frames. It'll sort of highlight them white and show you these like little like thingies you can play with. And then I'm literally just going to go up here and find this button for linear tangents and click it. And you can see that it's gotten rid of the curve, and now it's just a slow and it's a linear acceleration on this thing. So if I spin this around now, you can see that when it loops, it's going at a constant speed all the way around. It's not speeding up or slowing down or doing anything weird like that. So that's definitely something that I would want you guys to check for your actual turntables. In terms of setting up a turntable, that's pretty much it. There are a few, I'll go over the render settings that you need to be aware of for rendering multiple frames at once, and show you how to do render in both Arnold and Redshift in a later video.